This is going to be the final lecture in this section, and in this lecture we're going to be talking about how the speaking exam is marked by the examiners. You can actually find this out for yourself online. It's not like a hidden secret. If you go to Google and you search for IELTS speaking band descriptors, you will see this for yourself. But the band descriptors can be a little bit confusing and inaccessible to some people. So the idea of this lecture is to break everything down and make in terms of your speaking. And those four things are your fluency and coherence, your lexical resource, which is your vocabulary, your grammatical range and accuracy, and your pronunciation. So let's break this down and look at each of these categories in turn, focusing in particular on how we can score a band 7. So fluency and coherence to begin with. According to the official band descriptors, which you will see online, to achieve band 7 and above, you must speak at length without noticeable effort or loss of coherence. You may demonstrate language-related hesitation or some repetition and/or self-correction. You must use a range of connectives and discourse markers with flexibility. If that looks a little bit foreign to you, then let's have a look at it in more basic language. You should speak for a long time without struggling to find the right words as you are doing so. Of course, if you're in part 1, as we talked about, you don't have to speak for too long, but just try to speak at length for a longish time without struggling and hesitating. So don't worry too much if you do occasionally hesitate, repeat words or correct yourself. This is permissible and you can still score a band 7 while doing it, but you should try to avoid it if you can. And finally, you should link your ideas with appropriate words and expressions, but try not to rely on the same expressions and words every time. I have a few students, for example, who are too dependent on the word so. So I'm using it myself there, as you can see. But we want to try and use flexibility when we use these discourse markers. And you must use paraphrase effectively. So what does this mean in basic terms? Well, you need to show that you can talk about a variety of different topics by using a range of If we think about grammar, in order to achieve a band 7 or above, you need to use a range of complex structures with some flexibility, and you need to frequently produce error-free sentences, though some grammatical mistakes may persist. This one seems pretty self-explanatory, but let's break it down. Do not speak in very simple sentences only, but do try to include more complex structures too. Try to avoid making too many grammar mistakes. But don't worry if you make a few over the course of the test. Please don't let that distract you if you notice that it happens. Do try to come back and self-correct, but don't let it throw you off your rhythm and your flow. Aim for a sentence accuracy rate of above 50%. If you do that, then we can say that the majority of your sentences are error-free. And finally, if we think about pronunciation, in order to achieve band 7 and above, you need to show all the positive features of band 6, but not all the positive features of band 8 necessarily. So we can't really rely on Band 7 band descriptors here to highlight what we need to do. We need to think about what's involved in a 6 and an 8. One thing that is mentioned though for Band 7 is that you need to use a wide range of pronunciation features with mixed control. Essentially, for Band 6 you need to generally be understood, but for Band 8 you need to be easy to understand throughout. Those are in the band descriptors. So if we think about this in basic terms, we can see that you need to make sure that all of the Band 6 band descriptor criteria are met, but also meet a few of the Band 8 band descriptor criteria. You need to show that you can pronounce words accurately. That means using both the correct stress and the appropriate sound for the vowel or the consonant you're trying to produce. You also need to make sure you're using appropriate intonation. Essentially, this all comes down to making sure that you can be easily understood, and you can test this by perhaps speaking to a native speaker, then you really need to be working on improving your pronunciation. So let's have a quick roundup here. The 4 band descriptor categories. What are they? Fluency and coherence, lexical resource, grammatical range and accuracy, and pronunciation. So what are the criteria for achieving a Band 7 in each of these categories? Well, for fluency and coherence, you need to speak clearly at length, use a range of connecting expressions, use discourse markers, and you need to try to avoid hesitation, but don't worry too much about it because you can hesitate a bit. In terms of lexical resource, to score a Band 7, you need to use vocabulary to discuss a variety of different topics and be comfortable talking about different topics. Use less common vocabulary and try to use a few idioms as well. Show style and use collocations. Both simple and complex. Don't rely too much on the simple sentences. Don't make too many grammatical mistakes, but don't worry if you make a few. You are allowed to make a few mistakes, but you should aim for a minimum of 50% sentence accuracy. And for pronunciation, try to show control over a range of different pronunciation features, different sounds for different consonants and vowels. Effectively use intonation and stress of the sections, which each reflect a different part of the speaking test, will be broken into 4 lectures, each one focusing on a different criterion of each of the band descriptor categories. So let's get started on that journey by moving now into section 2, focusing on part 1 of the speaking test, and I will see you there.